When my fiancé said I need you to sign this Postnup, my investors are concerned, I smiled and agreed. But what he didn't know was that I am the anonymous NFT artist his entire circle has been following for years. The look on his face when my lawyer revealed I'm worth $12 million was a moment I'll never forget. Let me take you back to where this all started, because to understand how I got here you need to know who I really am. Not the version Marcus thought he knew for 2 years, my real self. My name is Sophia Chen, I'm 35 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been living 2 completely separate lives. On the surface, I'm exactly what everyone assumes, a freelance graphic designer working from my modest apartment in San Francisco's Sunset District. I drive a 10-year-old Prius with a dent in the back bumper. I shop at Trader Joe's. I wear the same rotation of jeans and simple tops until they're practically threadbare. My rent is reasonable by San Francisco standards, and my neighbors think I'm just another struggling creative trying to make it in an expensive city. But that's only half the story. The half I let people see. In my other life, the invisible one, I'm Silent Storm. If you're anywhere near the NFT art world, you've heard that name. I create digital landscapes, vast, haunting pieces that blend traditional Asian ink painting techniques with glitch art and augmented reality elements. My first major drop sold for $50,000 when I was 28. My most recent collection, released 6 months ago, brought in $1.2 million in a single weekend. Over the past 7 years, my total sales have exceeded $12 million. I also invested early in crypto, turning initial profits into a $3 million portfolio. My accountant manages it all through an LLC that has no connection to my legal name. The money sits in accounts Marcus never knew existed, managed by professionals he never met. This double life wasn't born from some elaborate scheme or criminal intent. It came from necessity. From a lesson I learned in the worst way possible when I was 23. My older sister, Emily, was the golden child growing up. Beautiful, confident, successful in commercial real estate by 25. She met David at an industry conference, charming, ambitious, the kind of guy who drove a BMW and wore expensive watches. They got married fast, and at first, everything seemed perfect. But David had a need to control everything, especially money. He insisted on joint accounts. He wanted to know every purchase Emily made. When she got a big commission, he'd immediately make plans for their money investments he controlled, purchases that benefited him. And when Emily finally tried to leave after 3 years of this suffocating control, she discovered she had nothing. He'd manipulated every account, every asset. She had to start completely over, financially devastated and emotionally broken. I was sitting on her couch the night she told me everything, watching her cry over bank statements, and I made myself a promise. I would never let anyone use money as a weapon against me. I would never give someone the power to control my financial independence. And I would never let anyone love me for what I could provide instead of who I was. So when my NFT art started selling, when the money started flowing in faster than I ever imagined, I made a decision. I would keep it hidden. I would live modestly, dress simply, drive an unremarkable car. I'd let people see just me, the person, the artist, the woman, before they saw dollar signs. It worked perfectly for 7 years. I built a career that was financially invisible. I made friends who had no idea about my real net worth. I dated occasionally, always keeping things vague about my income. No one suspected that the quiet graphic designer ordering the cheapest wine at dinner had millions sitting in carefully managed accounts. Then, 2 years ago, I met Marcus Thornton. It was at an art gallery opening in the Mission District, one of those trendy spaces with exposed brick and overpriced installations. I was there because I genuinely loved supporting emerging artists. Marcus was there because, as I later learned, he thought it was a networking event for investors. He had this magnetic energy that I hadn't encountered before. Confident without seeming arrogant, well-dressed but not flashy, the kind of man who could walk into any room and immediately command attention. He introduced himself as a venture capitalist, mentioned his portfolio casually, talked about recent investments in startups I'd actually heard of. Marcus drove a leased Tesla, lived in a sleek loft in Soma, and had business cards with raised lettering that read Thornton Capital Partners. His LinkedIn was immaculate, professional headshots, posts about deal flow and value creation, recommendations from people with impressive titles. Everything about him screamed success. What I didn't know then, what took me almost 2 years to discover, was that Marcus's entire image was built on a foundation of inherited money that was rapidly crumbling. His portfolio consisted of a $2 million trust fund from his grandfather, most of which he'd lost through bad investments and expensive lifestyle choices. His venture capital firm was just him, operating out of a co-working space he could barely afford. But Marcus had mastered something more valuable than actual success. He'd mastered the performance of it, the confidence, the presentation, the ability to make everyone in a room believe he was exactly who he pretended to be. I admired that drive, that determination to project strength even when things weren't perfect. It reminded me of my own journey, building something from nothing, believing in yourself before anyone else does. But what I admired most, what drew me to him in a way I didn't fully understand at first, was that he never asked about my finances. When I told him I was a freelance graphic designer, he accepted it without question. He never pushed for details about my income, never asked about my apartment or my car or why I always suggested inexpensive restaurants for our dates. He simply assumed I was comfortable but modest, a safe and stable partner who wouldn't threaten his carefully constructed narrative of being the successful one. And I let him believe it. For the first time in years, someone was looking at just me, not my potential, not what I could provide, not the possibilities my bank account represented, just Sophia, the woman who laughed at his jokes, listened to his dreams of expanding his investment firm, attended his networking dinners and smiled at his colleagues and made him feel supported. It felt safe. It felt normal. It felt real. For 2 years, we built a comfortable rhythm together. Marcus would come back from meetings with entrepreneurs, full of energy and enthusiasm, telling me about deals he'd closed. I'd listen, ask questions, celebrate with him over takeout pizza or cheap wine from the corner store. My own professional life remained deliberately vague. Freelance work, I'd say if anyone asked. Logo design, website mock-ups, pretty boring stuff honestly. Nobody pressed for details. Nobody seemed particularly interested. I attended his family brunches, smiled politely while his mother Carol talked about how wonderful it was that Marcus had found someone down to earth instead of those materialistic Silicon Valley women. I'd nod, say nothing, play the role perfectly. The understanding girlfriend, the modest partner, the woman who made him feel successful by comparison. And it worked. For 2 years it worked beautifully. Until 6 months ago, when everything started to change. The shift was so subtle at first that I almost missed it. Marcus started making comments about our future with this new edge of financial anxiety. When we're married, we'll need to be really strategic about money, he'd say over dinner at our favorite Thai place. His tone was casual, but his eyes were serious. My dad lost half his assets in his divorce. I won't make the same mistakes. I'd reassure him, thinking these were normal pre-marriage concerns. Every couple worries about finances, right? Everyone brings some baggage from their parents' relationships into their own. But the comments became more frequent, more pointed. He started mentioning friends who'd been destroyed by divorces, talking about postnups like they were common sense rather than relationship landmines. He'd quote articles he'd read about protecting assets in modern marriages and maintaining financial boundaries. Each comment was small by itself, insignificant, but together they formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Marcus wasn't just anxious about our future together. He was preparing for our ending. Then came the proposal. He took me to Boulevard, one of San Francisco's most expensive restaurants. The kind of place where a single bottle of wine costs $300. We had a window seat overlooking the Bay Bridge, candles flickering between us, the whole romantic setup. When he got down on one knee and pulled out the ring a modest princess cut that I later learned cost him $8,000 he didn't have, I said yes. Because despite the weird financial comments, despite the growing sense of unease, I loved him. Or I loved the version of him I'd built in my head over 2 years. We spent the next few months planning. His mother wanted to invite her entire book club. We debated Greece versus Italy for the honeymoon. Everything seemed to be moving forward normally. Until last month, when Marcus asked me to meet him at his loft. "We need to talk about something important," he texted. No explanation. Just that flat, ominous statement. I drove to his place with anxiety crawling up my spine. When I arrived, Marcus was pacing in his industrial-style living room, all exposed brick and expensive minimalist furniture he'd financed. He had a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, the expensive kind he kept for impressing clients. Sophia, he said, not even kissing me hello. My investors have been asking questions. I sat down on his leather couch confused. Questions about what? About us. About our financial arrangement going forward. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as stress. They're concerned about asset protection. They want assurance that my portfolio is secure. What does that mean? He handed me his tablet. I need you to look at this postnuptial agreement. Just standard protection stuff. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. Those words should have been my first warning. I took the tablet and started reading. The document was 17 pages, formatted in that dense legal language that makes everything seem both important and incomprehensible. I forced myself to read slowly, carefully. By page 3, my jaw was clenched so tight I could feel my teeth grinding. By page 7, my hands were shaking. By page 17, I understood exactly who Marcus really was. Section 4. Any income derived from digital content creation, including but not limited to graphics, illustrations, digital art, NFTs, online content, or related intellectual property created during the marriage, shall be considered marital property, with 50% ownership automatically transferred to Marcus Thornton. 50% of anything I created digitally, which meant 50% of Silent Storm. Section 9. All cryptocurrency holdings, digital wallets, and blockchain-based assets acquired or held during the marriage shall be classified as shared marital property regardless of initial investment source. He wanted half my crypto portfolio. The $3 million he didn't even know existed. But the clause that made my blood run cold was Section 12. In the event of divorce, regardless of fault or circumstances, Sophia Chen agrees to provide financial compensation to Marcus Thornton for sacrificed earning potential and opportunity costs incurred during the marriage, calculated at no less than $100,000 per year of marriage. I'd have to pay him for divorcing him. Even if he cheated, lied, or destroyed our marriage, I would owe him money for the privilege of leaving. I looked up from the tablet. Marcus was watching me with this careful expression, like a poker player trying not to reveal his hand. This seems very one-sided, I said, keeping my voice level. It's standard for people at my level, he said quickly. My portfolio is growing, and I need to protect it. Surely you understand that. What about my assets? He actually laughed. A short, dismissive sound that made something inside me go cold. Sophia, come on. You're a freelance designer. What assets? I'm not worried about protecting myself from your Trader Joe's budget. There it was. The truth he'd been holding back for 2 years. He didn't just think I had less money. He thought I was financially irrelevant. What about the digital content clause? I asked quietly. Why do you need protection from my little design clients? Oh, that. He waved his hand dismissively. That's just in case you start some kind of online business or whatever. Like an Etsy shop or something. Standard boilerplate. Don't worry about it. Your current freelance work doesn't count. My current freelance work. The stuff he thought was my real income. He had no idea that my little design clients included some of the biggest names in crypto. That my Etsy shop was actually a $12 million NFT empire. I should have thrown the tablet at him right then. I should have walked out and never looked back. That's what the comments on stories like mine always say. She should have left immediately. Why did she waste any more time? But in that moment, sitting on his expensive couch, I felt something else. Not heartbreak, not even anger. Something colder, clearer, more calculated. Marcus had just made the biggest mistake of his life. And I was going to let him discover exactly how big. Okay, I said simply. He blinked, clearly surprised. Okay? I'll have my lawyer review it. We'll go from there. The relief that flooded his face was almost funny. He thought I was being reasonable, cooperative, the understanding partner he'd always known. He had no idea I was already planning my countermove. I drove home and immediately called my attorney, Rebecca Kim. She'd been handling my Silent Storm contracts and IP protection for 5 years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and one of only 3 people who knew the full scope of my financial situation. She answered on the second ring. Please tell me he actually did it. He did it, I said quietly, pulling into my apartment building's parking lot. And Rebecca, it's worse than we thought. I forwarded her the Postnup. There was a long silence as she read. broken only by occasional sharp intakes of breath. "Sophia," she said finally, her voice that particular blend of fury and professional calculation I'd come to recognize. "This isn't just unfair. This is financial exploitation disguised as legal protection. He's literally trying to steal your future income while calling it asset protection. I know. He wants 50% of Silent Storm. Does he even know Silent Storm exists?" "No." Another pause. Then Rebecca laughed, low and dangerous. "Oh, this is going to be beautiful. Here's what we're going to do." We talked for 30 minutes. Rebecca explained that under California law, postnuptial agreements require full financial disclosure from both parties. If Marcus wanted this agreement, he'd have to show all his cards. And so would I. "We'll draft a counterproposal," Rebecca said, her voice crisp and precise. "On the surface, it'll look completely reasonable. Everything he asked for: separate property stays separate, clean division of assets, all that standard language. But we're adding one critical clause." "What clause?" "Complete financial disclosure. Full transparency. Tax returns, account statements, investment portfolios, business valuations, everything on the table. If he wants to protect what's his, both parties need to know exactly what that means." I felt something like a smile pulling at my lips. "He'll agree to that." "Exactly," Rebecca said. "He thinks it protects him. He has no idea what he's actually asking for." We spent the next week preparing. Rebecca had my entire financial picture documented: 7 years of tax returns showing Silent Storm LLC income, cryptocurrency statements, investment portfolios, everything. She organized it into a presentation that would make any CFO weep with envy. Meanwhile, Marcus texted me daily, casual and upbeat, as if he hadn't just tried to legally rob me. "Can't wait to get this paperwork finalized so we can focus on the fun stuff: wedding planning. My mom wants to know if you've picked bridesmaids yet." I responded normally, keeping up appearances. But I was watching him now, really watching, and seeing things I'd trained myself not to notice for 2 years. The way he always ordered the most expensive wine at restaurants, then complained about grocery costs. How he casually mentioned the price of his watch to valets and waiters. The way he positioned himself in group photos to be central, visible, important. His confidence wasn't quiet strength. It was desperate performance. 8 days after he'd shown me the postnup, Rebecca's counterproposal was ready. She sent it to Marcus's attorney, a guy named Todd Chambers who specialized in high-net-worth asset protection, according to his website. The subject line of Rebecca's email was simple: postnuptial agreement review and counterproposal. Marcus called me that evening, voice bright with relief. "My lawyer got your response. This is great. You're being so mature about this." Most women would have freaked out. Most women would have freaked out. I wondered how he'd categorize his own impending reaction. The signing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 2 p.m. at Chambers & Associates' office in the financial district. Marcus insisted on bringing his investor advisory team, which I later learned were actually his cousins who'd inherited money from the same grandfather. I arrived at the office building at 1:50. It was one of those glass and steel towers designed to make you feel small before you even walk through the door. The lobby had marble floors that echoed with every step. Rebecca met me in the elevator, her expression professionally neutral. But I caught the gleam of anticipation in her eyes. "Ready?" "Ready." The conference room was all windows and expensive furniture. Marcus was already there with Todd Chambers and 2 men in their 30s who looked uncomfortable in suits, the investor team. Marcus stood when I entered, his whole face lighting up with relief and affection. He actually tried to kiss me. I turned my head slightly so it landed on my cheek. We sat on opposite sides of the long conference table. Todd Chambers started with pleasantries, pulling out documents, making small talk about the weather and traffic. The performance of civility. "Let's begin with Mr. Thornton's financial disclosure," Todd said, sliding a slim folder across the table. Rebecca opened it without expression. Inside was Marcus's carefully curated financial picture. His venture capital portfolio, $2 million in a trust fund, currently valued at $1.4 million after losses. His Tesla leased, not owned. His loft rented, with 2 months' security deposit he'd borrowed from his mother. His investment accounts showing a modest $87,000 in stocks, most of it gifts from relatives. Rebecca reviewed each document methodically, taking notes. Then she slid her own folder across the table. It was significantly thicker, Miss Chen's financial disclosure, she said calmly. Todd opened it. I watched his expression change in real time. Professional neutrality morphing into confusion, then shock, then something close to panic. Marcus leaned over, trying to see what had caused the reaction. What is it? Todd's hands were actually shaking as he turned pages. We need a moment to review this. Review what? Marcus grabbed a sheet from the pile. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might actually faint. What the hell is this? His voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. Rebecca's voice remained perfectly calm, clinical. Miss Chen is the creator and sole owner of Silent Storm LLC, a digital art entity specializing in NFT creation and sales. Over the past 7 years, Silent Storm has generated $12 million in verified sales. That's not. Marcus looked at me like I'd transformed into a stranger. That can't be real. Page 4, Rebecca continued, unmoved. Cryptocurrency portfolio, current value $3.2 million. Initial investments made from Silent Storm profits, diversified across multiple established coins with documented transaction history. Stop, Marcus said, but Rebecca kept going. Miss Chen also maintains a personal investment portfolio valued at $400,000, separate retirement accounts with appropriate tax documentation, and has paid approximately $60,000 in state and federal taxes annually for the past 5 years. Everything is verified and documented. One of Marcus's cousins, I think his name was Brad, leaned forward. Wait, you're Silent Storm? The Silent Storm? I follow your work. Your last drop was incredible. Marcus turned on him with a look of pure betrayal, but didn't say anything. He was too busy staring at the documents spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. Todd Chambers cleared his throat, desperately trying to regain professional composure. This is unexpected. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to process. No, I said quietly. Everyone looked at me. I think we should address the Postnup now. Specifically, Section 4. The one where my fiancé wanted 50% of any digital content I create. The silence in that room was absolute. Marcus, I said, looking directly at him. Did you know what you were asking for? His mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Because if you'd known I was Silent Storm, would you still have wanted that clause? Or would you have wanted 75%? 90%? All of it? Sophia. His voice cracked. You've been lying to me for 2 years. I never lied. I told you I was a graphic designer. I am. I just didn't mention that my digital art sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars. You never asked. You assumed. You let me think. He couldn't finish the sentence. What? That you were the successful one? That you were protecting your assets from your poor, struggling girlfriend? I felt my voice getting colder. You wrote a Postnup that would have given you half of everything I've built while contributing nothing. And you called it standard protection. One of his cousins whistled low. Dude, she's worth like 8 times what you have. Shut up, Marcus snapped. Todd was frantically flipping through the documents again. Mr. Thornton, in light of this disclosure, I need to strongly advise that we reconsider. I need air, Marcus said abruptly. He stood so fast his chair scraped violently against the floor. I need to get out of here. He bolted for the door. Todd Chambers jumped up, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry. We clearly need time to process this information. We'll need to reconvene. But Marcus was already gone, footsteps echoing down the hallway. His cousins sat there awkwardly for another moment before one of them said, We invested in his fund based on. We thought he had better judgment than this. Then they left too. The conference room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Rebecca leaned back in her chair and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Well, she said. That went even better than expected. I stared at the scattered documents, at the chair where Marcus had been sitting moments ago, and felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Free. But I wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Marcus wasn't the type to accept humiliation quietly. I was right. Within 24 hours, his campaign started. He called everyone mutual friends, people we'd met at gallery openings, colleagues from his networking events. He crafted a story so carefully polished it could have been a startup pitch. She lied to me for 2 years, pretended to be normal, then ambushed me with millions. What kind of person manipulates someone like that? The messages started flooding my phone. Sophia, Marcus told me what happened. Is it true you've been hiding money from him? That seems really calculated. Just heard about the lawyer meeting. Marcus is devastated. Why would you embarrass him like that in front of people? I don't want to take sides, but Marcus seems really hurt. What's your side of the story? I didn't respond to most of them. What was I supposed to say? That Marcus had tried to legally steal my future income. That he demanded financial disclosure and then got angry when it revealed I was successful? It all sounded defensive, like excuses. But then something interesting started happening. People started asking questions. I heard through mutual friends that someone asked Marcus, "Wait, so you wanted a Postnup because you thought you had more money? But you're mad she has more. How does that work?" Another person apparently said, "You demanded to know her finances, and now you're upset about what you found? Isn't that what you asked for?" The logic of his story started crumbling. And then the tech community got involved. Someone on Twitter posted, "Just found out the creator of Silent Storm got engaged to a VC who tried to make her sign away 50% of her work. That's not a prenup, that's theft." It went viral in the NFT community. People who'd bought my art, followed my work, respected Silent Storm as an artist, they were furious on my behalf. Marcus's LinkedIn started getting comments. Not open criticism but pointed questions. Isn't it impressive when your partner is financially successful? True partnership means celebrating each other's wins, right? His cousins pulled their money from his fund. One of them apparently told him, "If you can't even recognize talent in your own relationship, why would we trust you with our investments?" His reputation in the VC world, built on networking and perception rather than actual success, collapsed almost overnight. Because the story wasn't man protects himself from gold digger. The story was man tries to exploit successful woman and gets exposed. 10 days after the lawyer meeting, Marcus called me. Not texted, called. I stared at his name on my screen for 3 rings before answering. "Sophia." His voice was rough, exhausted. "Can we talk, in person?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a neutral cafe in Hayes Valley, one of those places with overpriced coffee and uncomfortable stools designed to keep people from staying too long. Marcus looked terrible. He'd lost weight. His eyes were shadowed with dark circles. The confident polish I'd admired for 2 years had been stripped away, leaving someone who looked smaller, diminished. "I was wrong," he said before I could even sit down. "About everything. The Postnup, the assumptions, all of it. I was trying to protect an image that wasn't even real." I sat down slowly, not saying anything. "I've been seeing a therapist," he continued. "Trying to understand why I needed to be seen as the successful one so badly. And Sophia, I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry for trying to manipulate you, for treating your success like a threat instead of something amazing." Part of me, the part that had loved him for 2 years, wanted to reach across the table and accept the apology, to see if we could rebuild from here. But I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something crucial. This wasn't the man I'd loved. This was someone I'd created in my head. A story I'd told myself about who he was. The real Marcus was sitting in front of me now, insecure, image-obsessed, someone whose entire self-worth was built on other people's perceptions. And no amount of therapy could change the fundamental truth. He'd seen my success as something to steal, not celebrate. "I appreciate you saying that," I said quietly. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus." "I really do." His face crumpled. "That's it? That's all you have to say? What did you expect?" I thought. "I don't know. That maybe we could. You wanted me to sign a document that would have given you half of everything I built, while contributing nothing. You called my life's work standard boilerplate. You got angry not because I lied, but because I made you look small. That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. None of this was fair. But I'm done trying to make myself smaller so someone else can feel big." I stood up, left $20 on the table from my untouched coffee, and walked away. He didn't follow. 3 months later, I met David Park at a community art program for kids. I'd started volunteering, teaching basic digital art skills to elementary students. David was one of the regular teachers there, 5th grade, passionate about making art accessible to kids who couldn't afford private lessons. We were both sorting donated art supplies in the back room when he made a terrible pun about drawing conclusions, and I laughed so hard I dropped an entire box of colored pencils. Sorry, he said, helping me pick them up. I have an unfortunate habit of making art jokes. My students think I'm hilarious. Everyone else thinks I need new material. Your students are right, I said. We got coffee after the volunteer session. Then dinner the following week. Then a walk through Golden Gate Park, where he told me about his dreams of expanding the art program. Maybe finding grants to provide tablets so kids could learn digital skills. On our fourth date, sitting on his tiny apartment balcony with cheap wine and pizza, I told him everything. About Silent Storm, about the 12 million, about Marcus and the Postnup and the disaster in the lawyer's office. I braced myself for the shift, the calculation, the change in his eyes. Instead, David leaned forward, his expression genuinely excited. Wait, your Silent Storm? The Silent Storm? Yeah, that's incredible. He pulled out his phone. Okay, you have to teach me everything about NFTs. I've been wanting to do a unit on digital art for my students, but I don't know where to start. Do you think they could create simple pieces? Would that be possible on a basic tablet? I stared at him. What? He asked. You're not bothered by the money? He looked genuinely confused. Why would I be bothered? Sophia, you built something amazing. That's inspiring, not intimidating. And right there, on a fifth-floor balcony with traffic noise drifting up from the street below, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Actually seen, for who I really was. 6 months later, David proposed. No expensive restaurant, no elaborate setup. Just Sunday morning, making pancakes in his apartment, when he turned to me and said, I want to build a life with you. All of you. The artist, the teacher, the woman who cries at dog videos, the whole beautiful package. Will you marry me? I said yes. And then I said, we should probably get a prenup. He nodded immediately. Absolutely. You built that before me. It should be protected. We did get one. A fair one, drafted by Rebecca, reviewed by David's lawyer, designed to protect what we'd each built independently while sharing what we built together. No tricks, no exploitation, no clauses designed to diminish either of us. Just two people agreeing to be partners without anyone having to disappear. I still see Marcus occasionally, at industry events or gallery openings we both end up at. He nods politely. I nod back. There's no drama, no lingering anger. Just the quiet understanding that we were never actually right for each other. He's working a real job now, account management at a tech company. From what I hear, he's decent at it. More importantly, he seems more genuine, less performance. Therapy apparently helped, even if it was too late for us. As for me, Silent Storm is more successful than ever. My latest collection explored themes of identity and visibility, of being seen versus being perceived. The art world ate it up, but my favorite work isn't the million-dollar drops or the gallery shows. It's the digital art program David and I started together, teaching kids that creativity isn't about expensive tools or perfect technique. It's about expressing something true. Last week, one of our students, a quiet girl named Maya who barely spoke the first month, showed me a digital landscape she'd created on a donated tablet. It was rough, technically imperfect, but it had something real in it. Something honest. This is beautiful, I told her. She smiled, shy and proud. I made it myself. All of it. And I thought about how that's all any of us are trying to do. Build something that's genuinely ours. Find people who celebrate that instead of trying to take it. Be seen for who we really are, not who someone needs us to be. Marcus wanted me to hide so he could shine. David wants to build spotlights together. That's how you know you've found the right person. Not someone who makes you smaller, but someone who helps you take up exactly the space you deserve. If this story of how I turned the tables on financial manipulation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, anyone who asks you to diminish yourself isn't offering love. They're offering a cage with a prettier name. The right person will hand you the key to your own chains and say, you were never supposed to be locked up in the first place.